welcome in as we dive into everything people, power, and politics on Detroit's only nightly political talk show. I'm Roop Raj. We're honored you trust us to bring you fair, unbiased political news in a world where couples probably look at each other, maybe you on your phone, and ask each other, hey, is this true? Well, this is a half hour you can watch live, DVR, stream, or watch online later to get all the day's political news in one trustworthy place without having to wonder. Well, Michigan is not the only battleground state, but one thing is very clear tonight. The road to the White House runs right through it. 2 campaign stops so far this week, and there's more on the books, including a visit just announced by Vice President Kamala Harris. When and where that's happening, coming up in just a moment here. And a man who worked for the Reagans says he sees a possible shift coming in favor of the Republican Party. But get this, a well-known Democrat says it's true if her party doesn't get its act together. That's all coming up in the hot seat. But we begin tonight with a major news in Trump's election interference case. Special counsel Jack Smith filed a new indictment in the case after the Supreme Court's ruling on presidential immunity. Now, the new indictment has the same criminal charges, it's just narrower. You see, it removes part of the old one accusing Trump of trying to use the DOJ to overturn his election loss. But it keeps the part accusing Trump of taking part in a scheme to enlist false electors in battleground states to claim that Trump won. Now, here's the deal. Trump did respond on social media, claiming this case has all the problems of the old one and should be tossed out as well. That's focusing on the 2020 vote. But look at this. I want to show you this right now. 69 days away. If you're wondering what that's counting down to, it's the time polls open on November 5th. That's election day. You might not be ready for summer to be over because, look, we got cold weather, ice scrapers, salt on the driveway, shoveling 5 inches of snow. Okay, you get it. It's going to be a cold one, but you get the picture. The race for your vote heats up as the weather cools down. It's a sprint to the finish for both VP Harris and former President Trump with just 69 days to go. But whether you're voting Democrat or Republican this election, that's none of our business. That's your business. Blue or red or undecided, we respect your opinion. So much so, we built this show around you. So I hit the streets this afternoon with my cell phone to get a pulse check from you about how confident you are in the direction your party is heading in. Take a look. Kevin is on the pulse, about to get his haircut here. Hey, Kevin, how confident are you in the political party that you support, that they can succeed and they can do well?
I'm decently confident. It's tough. I believe in a little bit on one side, and I believe a little bit on the other side. So I'm kind of in the middle. It's been tough.
All right, Fadia, you're on the pulse here in Rochester. How confident are you in the political party that you support? Scale to 1 to 10.
4.
4?
4.
That doesn't sound very good.
No.
Why is it? You just don't like what you're hearing?
Kind of. It's like what's the whole thing's like the debate and everything's yes. If this is the only choice we have, absolutely 4.
All right, Shanae, you're on the pulse. Question for you. How confident are you in the political party that you currently are supporting?
I'm 100% confident. I have 100% faith that we've got this win. So, I'm really confident with my.
Will the debate change your mind at all?
We'll see.
Well, if you ever see me out in public with my phone, talk to me. We also asked you the question on fox2detroit.com. If you want to vote, you can scan that QR code right there on your screen to weigh in. So far, this one's not even close. The vast majority of you say, yes, you are. Now to the campaign trail, and another visit by former President Trump's running mate to the Great Lakes state. Senator J.D. Vance was in Big Rapids this afternoon. By the way, that's about 60 miles north of Grand Rapids. He was appearing at a horse farm near where an electric vehicle battery plant is planned. Vance pointed the finger at Harris for the inflation that we're seeing now and contrasted her campaign with the Trump ticket.
While Donald Trump is the people's president, and Kamala Harris is running on a fake joy, Donald Trump is going to offer something very, very different. He's going to offer a very real hope for the future of this country. Hope that we can reignite our economy and bring back prosperity. Hope that we can raise our kids in secure neighborhoods with safe borders. Hope that we can renew the patriotism that binds us together as one nation under God.
Now, this is Vance's fourth visit to Michigan since he joined the Trump ticket, but he's far from alone this week in visiting the Great Lakes state. Former President Trump will make his second stop this week in our state on Thursday. We got to get these guys Lions jerseys, whether you're blue or you're red. He's going to be not far from the capital city. He'll be speaking at a steel plant in Potterville, just west of Lansing. That same day, VP Harris's husband, second gentleman Doug Emhoff, will be here in Michigan as well. He'll be speaking in Grand Rapids in what's being billed a campaign event, but details about that have not been released, so stay tuned. And all new tonight, the vice president herself will spend part of the Labor Day holiday in the Motor City. The campaign confirming to us tonight that Harris will be in Detroit this Monday. We're still working to learn details about when and where the campaign event is happening. As you know, though, Labor Day in Detroit, that's a big day. And if it's a political season, many of these politicians want to march in some of these parades. We'll see what she ends up doing. We'll keep you updated on this show. Well, speaking of the Harris ticket, we told you yesterday about how former President Trump got endorsements from two former Democrats, and now we're learning Vice President Harris is getting the green light from a bunch of Republicans. 238 former campaign staffers of former Presidents George H.W. Bush and George W. Bush, as well as former GOP presidential candidates John McCain and Mitt Romney. Those backers are saying that they're now behind Harris. Many of these staffers also backed President Biden's 2020 bid against Trump. They say if Trump is elected, it will hurt real people. And the letter went on to say this: of course, we have plenty of honest ideological disagreements with Vice President Harris and Governor Walz. That's to be expected. The alternative, however, is simply untenable. Now, we are 2 weeks out from the first debate between Trump and Harris. Another level of drama surrounding that showdown on stage. You remember yesterday we told you the question of will they or won't they was asked again. Now it appears they will. Trump posted on his Truth Social account that he reached an agreement to do the debate as scheduled on ABC as planned. He had some added words about ABC. He added the rules will be the same as the debate between him and President Biden. Now, the latest squabble had to do with whether the microphones would be muted when it's not the candidate's turn to speak. We did reach out to the Harris campaign to get their side of the story. I emailed them about 4 hours ago, so wait and see. We'll see what they have to say tomorrow on The Pulse. All right, now to an effort to get out the vote, talking about moms. Follow me here. VP Harris and Governor Whitmer both had to care with mothers who are battling cancer. And it's something that you heard a lot on the Democratic National Convention stage last week. We talked with pollster Bernie Porn, who says the strategy is aimed partially at senior voters who supported Biden, but aren't so sure about Harris. Take a listen.
Talking about mom, I think, is an attempt to appeal to the older voters to make sure that Kamala Harris can capture as much support among them as Joe Biden had captured, because she's not quite at that level yet.
Now, Congresswoman Alyssa Slotkin also said she's campaigning because of her mother, who she says fought the healthcare industry for better care. Well, it's no secret how big of a role social media plays in the news cycle, especially in an election year. And there are a couple of big political stories involving these two platforms, Facebook and X, that we should tell you about tonight. Let's start with Facebook. That's where CEO Mark Zuckerberg says some Biden administration officials pressured the site to censor some COVID-19 content during the pandemic. In a letter to Congress, Zuckerberg claims the officials told Facebook for months to take down certain content, including humor and satire. He now says the pressure was wrong, and the company would push back if it faced these demands again today. The White House says the administration tech companies need to keep in mind the impact their actions have on everyday Americans, adding they encouraged, quote, responsible actions to protect health and safety. Now to X, the site I can't and won't stop calling Twitter. Even when I try, I still try to say Twitter. I try to say X and I can't get it out, but here it is. X, the platform says it changed its AI chatbot because 5 secretaries of state, including Michigan's own Jocelyn Benson, says it was spreading election misinformation. A letter sent to the site's owner, Elon Musk, says the platform's chatbot Grok put out false information about state ballot deadlines not long after President Biden dropped out of the race. The chatbot now pushes people to vote .gov for the most accurate and up-to-date information. That, of course, the building of X. On the Pulse, covering everything people, power, and politics from Detroit to Washington and beyond. There's a lot of energy surrounding both campaigns. The Democrats getting a huge spotlight, though with a new face at the top of the ticket, known as that surprise. One man, Mayor Ethan Baker of Troy, says there could be a shift coming to the Republican Party. He's in the hot seat now. He's a Republican who worked for Reagan after he left office as a special assistant. Thanks for staying up late with us. Ethan Baker, good to see you.
You too, Real.
So let's talk about this. You have an interesting theory. We're looking at all this fervor, all of this energy around Harris. And the swap of the campaign came where Biden dropped out and now Harris is in. That energy, that's hard to combat for the Republican Party, but they're trying hard.
It is for sure. And I think obviously having a new candidate in the race after 4 years of what everyone thought was going to be just a continuation has given a new energy to certain groups of people that has made it that way. And coming off a convention of the national level like this is always excitement. It's about bringing out your base in exciting times. But I think maybe the Democrats are peaking. If I can, I'm speculating a little bit, but I know that these the enthusiasm gap and the enthusiasm, they're cyclical with the parties. And I've seen even in Troy, where our local Troy Democrats, they're really motivated. They've been really organized the past few years, past several cycles actually, and the Republicans have kind of been quiet and kind of rebuilding and regrouping. But while the Democrats are thriving, you start to see the Republicans build slowly, and I see them meeting more, and I see them getting more excitement and more people together. And I watch the Democrats start to, have some disagreements, have some factions between them, and that's usually right before they start to fall apart and the other party rises up. So well, I think that's coming.
It's an interesting theory, and you've been entrenched in politics from early days of your career, working for President Reagan and his wife when they left office, and the Presidential Library. You helped close that library. I mean, there's a lot of experience that you have. Talk about this from a historic point of view. When Trump was running in 2016, there was a lot of excitement. People said he could never win. 2020, it was such a close match. And here we go again. You think that somehow the powers that be in the GOP are revving up the motors and the engines again? You see it coming?
I think so. I don't know if it's going to happen before November of this year, but I definitely think at least after this cycle, things are going to be really different in the parties at the state level, especially here in Michigan, right? It happens time and time again. You look at the governor's mansion here in Michigan, it goes back and forth between Republicans and Democrats. There's a lot of reasons for that, but one of the reasons is because the party out of power gets really motivated to work together and figure out how to get into power. And then once you have power, you tend to screw it up.
Well, let's talk to one of those people who is in power at a local level. We're talking about Representative Morgan in the state legislature here. He talked to the Pulse just earlier, and he has this to say.
Have an incredible amount of enthusiasm in the Democratic Party, particularly for Vice President Harris and Governor Walz on this ticket, and we have to make sure that we do not take that for granted. This is ultimately going to come down to who shows up at the polls, and we have the momentum in our favor.
Now, whether you're Republican or Democrat, you would agree with Representative Morgan there that it really does depend on who shows up at the polls. So while the party may be rebuilding, the Republican Party from the inside, what about the voter base that's sitting on the other side of that camera? How do you get them to believe that their party is regrouping and becoming strong again?
Well, I think you have to show you're the party that can win and that will win and has the better ideas. I'm always talking about policies. I think ultimately it comes down to how people are going to feel about what you're going to do for them. And that can be on a personal level, but can also be on the hardcore policies and what they're actually proposing to do for you. So if a candidate can successfully explain what they can do for you, Roop, or me, Ethan, that's who's going to get our votes. And so enthusiasm is one thing. Representative Morgan's right, but you got to turn that enthusiasm into actual action. You can have all the excitement in the world and have a big party, but if that doesn't actually get you off the couch to do things and go out and organize and actually make those votes happen, it's not going to work.
All right, but both of these candidates, I know the DNC, you're coming off that big party with, a lot of buzz, but the Republican Party as well, coming off the assassination attempt, getting Vance involved with this. Are both sides equally inept at talking about policy right now?
It seems to be kind of out of fashion to talk about policy at the national level, especially. I think you see it more at the local level because you have to. But that is kind of what we're looking at. We're looking at a TikTok campaign. We're looking at social media. We're looking at sound clips. Everything that we all claim that we don't like about politics is what we're all still supporting and getting excited about.
Senator Jim Runstad is a powerhouse in the legislature here locally as well, just like Morgan is on the Democratic side. He had this to say here on the Pulse tonight.
Well, thank you for having me on the Pulse today, but it's very clear that the Trump campaign has enormous energy. Every one of his rallies are jam-packed. J.D. Vance is going to be in Michigan. It will be jam-packed. People are excited beyond belief because they know what they're getting. They're getting somebody who could stand up and answer questions, and you have Kamala Harris hiding out in the basement, hiding out, the media giving her a complete pass. When she has to finally get up and do a debate, when she has to think and answer some questions, it's going to be a catastrophe for the Democrats.
All right, that's, of course, one man's opinion here on the Republican side, but he said something about the debate. You talk about policy. Look, the parties are both over. Let's just say close the door on the parties. RNC last month, now this, and now it's time to talk policy. What do you expect to hear from this debate? Is it just going to be infighting, or not infighting, but rather fighting, or do you think it's really going to be policy-driven?
I think it'll be both. I mean, frankly, I think the candidates should sit down like this couple nights a week
on the pulse.
And talk. Well, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely. And the vice president should be interviewed by Rup Raj.
Absolutely.
I think that'd be great.
We've done it before. We should do it again.
Yeah, but right. No, I mean, there'll be some policy. There has to be, and because the questions will drive that. But you're going to hear repeated sound bites and repeated comments over and over again. And we kind of do know where President Trump's policies stand, or at least what he's claimed for the past several years. There is an eagerness to hear what Vice President Harris has to say. You know, her website lacks any specific policy points. She hasn't really talked about a lot of that. She's made some big, statements and talked about a few economic things she'd like to do, but we as an American public don't really know what her plans are as president. And I think that's going to be what she'll be challenged on in an upcoming interview and certainly at the debate. And if the moderator of the debate doesn't ask, I'm sure that President Trump will continually ask her over and over and over again.
Well, let's talk about what President Trump, as a Republican, what do you think he needs to do in order to get those undecided voters? Do you think there's something in terms of his mood and his tenor that he could change and shift to try to attract a voter base that currently doesn't like how brash he is?
I don't think there's so many undecided voters at this point. I think there's still some persuadable voters, just like you saw when the first debate with President Biden and President Trump. People were quick to drop off of supporting Biden. They weren't necessarily going to vote for Trump, but if you lose enough votes from one side, that only helps the other person. So I don't know what he can do to help sway some of the undecideds with a very small group that still exists. He just needs to be consistent with his messaging, which he is for the most part, and he needs to, again, talk about how it's going to change your life if he's elected president.
J.D. Vance called Trump weird. Trump calls people crooked this, that, and the other. Does that name calling need to stop so we can make room for policy?
It should. It won't. But it should.
Yeah, I should say Tim Walz called him weird.
You said
Tim Walz called Trump weird.
I think J.D. Vance did once too, but that's a whole other story.
It's a lot of name calling on both sides, and we should point that out, that we're not picking on anybody in particular. But
well, I'll tell you, my former boss Ronald Reagan didn't go around calling his opponents names.
No,
he talked about what he was going to do for the country and for the
and
vote.
I know George W. and George H.W. didn't either. It's an interesting time we live in, and one that we'll continue to keep track of on this program with good guests like Ethan Baker, the mayor of Troy. It's good to see you. Thanks for joining us here tonight.
You too. Thanks, Rup.
All right, welcome back to The Pulse. We are diving into all things people, power, and politics as we do every night from the D to D.C. And we are keeping the conversation going about the energy in both parties headed into this election. But taking a page out of Saturday Night Live's playbook, just in a real way, not satire, point counterpoint. We introduced this to you last week during the Democratic National Convention. But now, two faces you know well from Let It Rip are squaring off, starting with former State House Majority Leader Rocky Ruchkowski, who says the GOP's message is starting to resonate with some non-traditional people. Here's what he had to say.
When you look at the energy amongst Republicans going into this election, there is quite a bit of energy, and they're talking about issues. And at one point, Democrats are going to have to address issues, not personalities, not issues that have already been voted on, but they're going to have to address real issues like inflation, the southern border, national security, where they stand on Israel, where they stand on Ukraine. And when you do that, people will then see exactly if they're the party of the working man and woman or if they're not.
Now, you might think that former Democratic State Representative Sherry Gay Dignago, as an ardent Democrat, would disagree that a shift could happen. Well, you'd be wrong, but it's not for the same reason.
There is a concerted effort by the Republican Party and my favorite candidate's opponent that is reaching and stepping into urban centers in the community. And we see that by the targeted mailings that Black males are receiving from the age of, say, 25 to 40. The Democrats can't rest on their laurels. This is an organized effort to make sure that the Republican Party is leaving no stone unturned. Unfortunately, in a lot of instances, the Democratic Party is leaving people out of the loop that they should be bringing in.
Now back to Rocky. We asked him if the Trump-style Republican is the way the party is moving going forward, or if we could see a return to the Bush, Romney, McCain style like you heard Ethan Baker talk about there. And he had this to say.
I can't even address that because I think what we're going to see is each candidate will have to be his own man or woman and represent themselves as they see fit. So, you know, Trump is Trump. McCain was McCain. The future candidates like Ron DeSantis or Nikki Haley will be Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley. It's not, you don't go into a Republican Party and get clothed with a specific robe and a specific personality and a campaign theme, very much like the Democrats do. The Democrats have a specific talking points, and those talking points are spread throughout the journalists and throughout the media and throughout all of their party. And those are those talking points.
Interestingly enough, that's also something Sherry Gay D'Agnago agreed with and says it's time for the Democratic campaign to think outside the box.
I met this past weekend a whole household of people that had never, ever voted. They've invited me into their home to sign them up so they can come out and vote for the first time in history. I met a number of young men that said, absolutely not. I'm not voting for either one of them. I don't want to be bothered. And I said, listen, I'm Auntie. And Auntie needs you. Auntie needs you not only to vote for me, but I need you to vote for your future. And I took their phone numbers. I took pictures with them. And they said, I'll do it for you. That's the kind of way we're going to have to get out the vote. Get out of our silos. Get out of our titles. Get out of our positions and really connect with the people. That's the problem. They don't know how to connect with the people.
Yeah, you really, when you say grassroots, you got to be on the grass. You got to go talking to people in every neighborhood. Finally, we asked both Rocky and Sherry to put their fortune teller hats on, asking them where they thought the country would be after the election, starting again with Rocky.
I hate being a fortune teller because I'm not one. If I was, I wouldn't be in this business. But I'll tell you that much, that I truly believe that most Americans will see the Democratic Party for who they are. They may be Democrats and they may believe in the Democratic ideology, but just like RFK, who was a lifelong Democrat, Tulsi Gabbard, who was a lifelong Democrat and ran for both of them, ran for president on the Democratic ticket. And it's not that they actually got more votes than Kamala Harris did in the Democratic primaries in the past. So the issue would be that I would believe that Americans would open up their eyes and choose a better life.
Not surprisingly, that's where Rocky and Sherry parted ways and disagreed. Here's what she had to say.
I believe that the people of Michigan and I believe that this country will ultimately see through the lies of the Republican Party. And I believe ultimately that people will vote with their heart. They will vote with the intent of hope. They will vote with the intent of joy, and they will vote with the intent of peace. That's what we need in this country. Someone with a steady hand, someone with a steady heart, someone who is going to look out for all of our citizens throughout this country. I believe that we're going to vote Kamala Harris for our next president of these United States.
We'll need to hear from her, and she's been criticized for not doing interviews. She, late tonight, agreed to do an interview with CNN at some point. We'll be keeping tabs on all of this. That's the show for tonight. Thanks for joining us. Have a good night.